I want to talk about loan forgiveness because I know that's why most of you are here, and rightfully so. Okay. And this goes right back to the PSLF waiver. This slide has not changed. I've been doing this presentation for 3 years. This slide has not changed. These 5 steps are still the 5 steps that are key. So first, what is public service? You have to work full time. That's important. I'll talk more about that later. For 10 years, and you have to make payments for 10 years. You have to be on, the first step is you have to be on the right qualifying repayment plan. What does that mean? When I say qualifying repayment plan, that's back to the alphabet soup. Are you on standard repayment? Are you on an income-driven repayment plan? Are you on graduated? Are you on an extended? Many of you won't know that question. That's okay. There's lots of folks I talk to every day that don't know, okay? There's ways to find out. 2, you have to be on a qualifying loan type. We already talked about this. This is the FFEL loans. This is the Perkins loans. If you're on those loans, they do not qualify for public service loan forgiveness, but they can become eligible by way of consolidation. So this hasn't changed. The only thing that's changed is once you consolidate, they will count your past payments. Under normal circumstances, they wouldn't count the old payments, okay? 3rd, you have to certify your employment. I mentioned that earlier. I'm going to show you what that form looks like on the very next slide. 4, you have to make 120 payments. Now, you might say, Kevin, we're in COVID forbearance. You're right. And your payment is $0 and it counts. That's one of your 120. March 20th, March of 2020, April of 2020, May of 2020, June of 2020, all the way to today, all of those count. You're in COVID forbearance. Those all count. So when we get to March of this year, you'll have 24 payments that count towards 120 that were $0. That's all great news for you. And then when you get done doing all of these first 4, then you have to apply for forgiveness. You have to raise your hand and say, I want forgiveness. So those are the 5 steps. Those haven't changed. This is what the form looks like. This is only page 1. There is a page 2. This is the page that you, the borrower, fill out. It's very straightforward. It's just your demographics, your name, your address, your date of birth, your social security number. It's very straightforward. There are 3 boxes. There used to be multiple forms. They streamlined this about 1.5 years ago and made it 1 form, which is great. The 3 boxes are important. If you haven't made 120 payments, you should just check box 1. That says, please tell me how many payments I have made out of the 120, okay? Box 2 is, I believe I've made 120 and I would like forgiveness, okay? That's the favorite box that everybody likes, okay? Box 3 is, while you're checking if I'm eligible for forgiveness, I want to be in forbearance. Don't make me pay any more money. I don't want to pay any more because I think I've already paid enough and I've made the 120. While we've been in COVID forbearance, I have not checked this box for anybody because you're in COVID forbearance. So while they're checking, you might as well still be making $0 payments and getting credit. There's no reason to come out of COVID forbearance. No reason to check that box. Once payments resume, if you think you're at 120, you should check that box. Then you sign and date. That's your page. Page 2 is what your employer fills out. So if you're working at a local presbytery, they will fill out page 2. The most important pieces of information on that page that your employer will fill out are 1, their tax ID number. That's how the Department of Education knows if you work for a qualifying employer. They're going to go to the IRS with that number that you give them, and they're going to check, is this a non-profit public service entity? So that's one thing that your employer needs. 2, they're going to ask for your dates of employment. When did you start? When did you leave? Or are you still working there? 3, they want to know how many hours a week do you work? And relatedly, are you full-time or part-time? Different employers have different hour thresholds for full-time and part-time. Some employers require 30 hours. Some employers require 35 hours. Some employers require 38 hours. Everybody's different. As long as you're working more than 30 hours and your employer considers you full-time, you qualify. Those are the important elements on page 2, which the employer fills out, and then they have to sign it. They have to put their name on it so they can call and check them if they want to. All right, here's the qualifying work. 10 years of full-time employment at a qualifying 501c3 nonprofit tax-exempt organization. The Presbyterian Church is a qualifying employer. Proselytizing qualifies. This was the good news I shared earlier. People actually get public service loan forgiveness working for the church. I've seen it. It happened last week. You can also work in federal, state, or government organizations. You could be in the military. So if you served in the military and then started working for the church, you could combine those back to back and count that towards your 10 years, or any other public service type organization. I talked about full-time. I left out, you can qualify part-time as well. And I know many for the church are part-time. I've talked to many of you. To qualify working part-time, you have to work for 2 qualifying employers simultaneously, the same time. And between the 2 or more, you can work for more than 2. You could work for 3 or 4, that's fine. They have to be at the same time, and you have to work more than 30 hours across the 2 or more employers. So if you work at one presbytery and you work part-time, you work 25 hours a week, that doesn't qualify. But if you turn around and work at a homeless shelter, and it's a nonprofit agency, organization, or foundation, and you work there 10 hours a week, 25 hours at the church, 10 hours at the homeless shelter, that's 35 hours, you would qualify. That time would count towards your PSLF. So you can get there part-time as well. These are the eligible loan types: direct loans, subsidized or unsubsidized, direct plus loans, direct consolidation loans. We've talked a lot about consolidation loans. And then we talked about the many types of loans that can become eligible by way of consolidation. All the FFEL loans, the Perkins loans, the Parent Plus loans. Some of you have Parent Plus loans. Those can become eligible, but you have to consolidate them. What cannot qualify? That's also important. These cannot qualify. If you have defaulted loans cannot qualify. Private loans, you cannot qualify. And any sort of consolidation loan that includes spousal consolidation does not count, cannot count, does not qualify. Another important note, the 120 payments. I mentioned they have to be on time. They do not have to be consecutive. You could start working at the church, may take time off. Maybe you have a sick family member and you have to help take care of a parent or a sick spouse, or maybe you have children and you decide to leave to raise your family, and then you return to the church 5 years later. When you leave, if you had 100, let's say when you left employment, you had 50 qualifying payments. When you return 5 years later and you make that first payment while you're employed, that's payment 51. You're not back at 0. Okay, does not need to be consecutive. So these are the kind of the key takeaways. So I know I've covered a lot, and I've covered it probably fast, and I apologize for that. But and I know this is the most important topic.